Hey everyone, it's a bright sunny day today. It is Thursday in the middle of our lovely Trump week, I guess as you call it. It's not Easter this week, and as I'll mention, it's quite the show we got going on there. So I'm going to share with you. I promised I'd come back at the end of my month of inner silence and share with you where I'm at and what's come about. So I'm going to do that. I'll do it all as an audio so that it's easier for my uploading. But I just wanted to say hi and let you know all is good, and we will get on to the discussion. Okay, so what can I tell you? I've mostly been good, I guess. The last month I spent a lot of time in silence, and it was at times quite useful. At times it was quite challenging. It was helpful, I think, for the books I was doing, which I will get to in a moment. But generally, it was a very interesting experience, and I highly recommend others if you're interested. You don't have to necessarily do it for a month like I did. You just have to take a week or 10 days and just really give yourself a lot of time with just being in absolute quiet. Um, it's very valuable, actually. So, since it's been about a month since I've actually talked to you, so our world it just keeps, it takes another step of crazy. And there was some other crazy that's gone on, right, in the last month. I haven't talked much yet at all with you about the editing of books. And that's really, really important. I had mentioned a number of months ago, way back, even last year, that if there were books you wanted to buy, or if there were things on the internet that you felt was important, that you needed to have them as a hard copy, that you can't just have any sort of digital material or think you have access to something digital, right? The Roald Dahl books, um, Ian Fleming's James Bond book, they're being edited, right? The words are being changed in their book. And of course, the authors are dead, so they don't get to have a say in it. And it's just an example. You're going to see more and more and more and more things are going to be literally just like 1984. The language is going to be pulled out of things so that the way you change, the way you change thought and behaviors, you take the words away, right? What was that? What was that from 1984? That if you don't have a word for freedom, then you can't have freedom because a word doesn't exist for it. It reminds me of the same. There was a lot of early native Indian languages before the white people came. They didn't have a word for lying because no one in the native community did it. And so they couldn't understand at the beginning what the colonists were doing until they actually had to create a word for it to explain what they were doing. So language is really important. What words are there and what words aren't there? And you're going to see a lot more of that. More and more words are going to try to be taken out of your lexicon of use. So again, if you've got something you think is important, please, go and get one. And if possible, make sure it's a physical copy. A physical copy is going to have more chance of survival. We've got what? Bill Gates trying to put masks on cows, and whatever other insane things that they're doing. Of course, we've got banking crisis, which I don't need to talk to you about. We've all been anyone who's seen anything has been waiting for that for a decade. It's just, when is it finally going to hit the tipping point? The Chat GPT and all of the AI stuff, because it all came out in about a week, in the middle of March. All of these new AI programs were just blasted out onto the market. And it's now that you begin to see what's there. I haven't used it and I don't plan on using it, but I am seeing exactly what it's doing into the depth of what I don't call it knowledge, the depth of things that it can do at high speed is actually pretty scary. And when you start to recognize that, two things. One, that what the public gets now is 10 years behind what the government and the military's had. So when you're seeing this Chat GPT, that's what they had in like 2012, 2013. So a lot of things start to make sense when you look at the last 10 years or so of things that have gone on. And you realize the behind the scenes technology that's been there that we didn't, of course, we don't know what it is now. We're starting to see what it is because they're starting to let us have access to it. One of the things that's really bizarre is the number of photos that are starting to appear over the last 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 months. I don't know if I've talked about them, but it's like these pictures of Antarctica, and they've got the pyramids and Egyptian obelisks. And now I've seen some weird ones that come out. They're obviously AI generated, like they're obviously fake, but tens of thousands of people are believing this stuff, is believing because it's a photograph and it looks old, so it has to be a real photograph. And oh, they're hiding things from us. And yeah, they are hiding things from you, but now the line is being blurred when AI can just create anything. And it's especially very good when you give it an existing photograph and ask them to just alter the photograph with something. So I wondered when I first did my World's Fair videos, or when I wrote the book, I should say, back in 2019, it was a bit hard to get a lot of photographs, not of the fairs themselves, but of anything building related, of anything earlier. And then all of a sudden, about 6 or 8 months after my book came out, all of a sudden I was bumping into more and more construction sites. And I didn't think much of it, but now, as I realize what's been behind the hood for a lot of years here, how many of these photographs would be real? How many of these photographs would be just AI generated? So it's a really interesting question to ask now, because now you have to start questioning the validity of any photograph that hasn't been available for at least 10 or so years for sure, 15 years better. That if that's been, I don't mean like claiming it was taken 15 years ago. I mean, literally it's been available. You can prove that, yeah, in 2006, this was put on this website. It was in this book in 1987. So, it's a real photograph. Otherwise, anything that just pops out with no verification as to that it was for sure seen before 2010, you have to question it. It's pretty sad, but you have to question the photograph. It doesn't mean to go goofy on anything, but it just means you have to really think carefully. If you want to think of some of these things like Chat GPT and all these other things, when you begin to see each of these artificial intelligence as a like the thing itself, when you see that as an archon, or as an archon in making, an archon being created, you'll start to begin to understand not per se how this reality's moving and what it's moving towards. You can start more to go backwards and see a really good depiction of the creation of our reality. And it's giving you a really good metaphorical understanding of what archons really are. So I'm just leaving you with that clue that when you start, if you check into what AI can do in the world of, photographs and ideas and problem solving now and writing your term paper and passing university tests or whatever, and begin to see that as that's an archon in development, that will begin to give you an understanding of what you're looking at in the creation of this simulation. Yeah. There's a continuing craziness in people. I'm sure you've recognized there's a more meanness to people, or a more antagonistic of course. I've learned a lot about talking about these kinds of subjects now. Exit the cave, and I've lost a tremendous number of friends. Now I know that they're not saying that's why they don't contact me, but it's pretty obvious. They don't like the material. They don't like what I'm saying. So they're cutting me out of their conversation circle. And I'll get to that in a minute. But this meanness that's really interesting. And you're seeing this in so many YouTube or just channels, whatever, on the internet that are just designed. They're just there to try to attack something, anything. It doesn't matter what it is. They have something to complain about, something to be upset about, something to be angry about, something to, and it's and particularly once you get to a subject like this, we're all of us. You just have to look around. We're under attack on a huge front. And some people have asked me, doesn't that make you angry or something? I'm like, well, no, it actually makes me quite sad. Sad, of course, that partially you see how the system reacts, of course, to trying to put something truthful out. I mean, I don't know what I'm saying is, of course, 100% truthful. I'm sure it's not. If I'm hitting 50%, I would be thrilled. But it's there to take us into a subject that hasn't really been talked about much in the last 100, 200, whatever years. Get people to start talking and thinking. There was a channel recently that did what I thought was a really, really nice thing about it. The channel and the person went through my book and they talked about what they liked, what they didn't like, what was valuable, it was like a Gnostic group. And it turned out to be a great presentation, a great discussion, and it was great. They didn't agree with everything. They shared their own viewpoints on certain things, and that was the point of the book, was to create discussion. But I see it's created just tremendous opposition. And again, I don't feel angry. I feel sad for the people who are doing this, because it obviously means they're in such inner suffering, inner pain, that when you don't, it's pretty classic behavior. When you don't have something yourself to be able to present, when you don't have your own experiences, when you don't have your own knowledge, when you don't have something that you're really trying to let people rise up to, then you can see this all through your own life, that what they'll do is find somebody who they think is ahead of them and try to attack them and try to drag them down to their level. It's a fairly common psychological tactic. So I don't feel angry about it. I feel quite sad and just the proliferation. There's so many good things about the internet. There's so many positive. There's always positive sides to it, and there's huge negative sides to it, and that just happens to be one of the many negative sides of technology. Of course, that technology will soon become an Archon as another side of it. But so given all that, because I said one of the things I'd be doing in this month of silence was deciding where I want to go from here, and I've come to learn that subjects like this, subjects that are at the deepest level of attempting to reveal the structure of reality, the structure of the matrix, a lot of that is a lot of that is supposed to be thought of very carefully, of what you share outwardly, what you share inwardly, right? In the sort of Jesus terms of the what gets shared in parable to the masses, and what would be shared completely to the disciples in his group, right? I should actually bring up that was another thing of our crazy world that just made me think of now, and that's of course this whole Donald Trump insanity, which is obviously it's paralleling the Jesus story. Like, it's Thursday. I wanted to make this because today is Thursday that I'm making this video. So Trump's had his arrest a few days before, the Easter Friday. And now, I mean, who knows the way the world is now? Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow on Friday? But we know how the story plays out. So far, a lot of the story has already got the check marks in the week-long Trump fiasco. So we'll see by Monday morning if any other of the story has symbolically, like, I don't think there's going to be, an actual death involved, but there could be some sort of symbolic something that gets presented with him or his life or his business properties or something that you could metaphorically place it into the biblical story, because it's also strange, and the timing and the way it's being played out. Some of the locations in New York that was involved this week have, anyway, biblical connections. But anyway, so it's been learning that this kind of material generally gets kept more private. And I don't mean that it's like in some sort of secret society, or, it's held by some fraternal order. It's not so much like that. That's trying to control That's some people trying to control knowledge. Even temples would try to control knowledge. It was just this realization of once you attain certain understandings, there's certain things that just can't be shared openly because the level of antagonism and the level of upset that gets created in of course the mental structure of the average person, the mental need for reality to be what they come to believe it is and to act the way it is, and all of their hopes, dreams, wishes, fears, beliefs, faiths to be presented as true and the only viewpoint to anything. Certain things can be presented quite openly. Certain things could, like I say, can be presented sort of casually and in parable. And certain things have to only be shared with what you might call people that you know personally that are working and walking the same path as you. And so because of that, I'm going to make some changes. First of all, I feel I've pretty much, as Exit the Cave sits now, I think I'm really pleased with the book, actually. I kind of reread it over the last month. I'm very, very pleased with how I wrote it, with the language use, with the way things are presented in not a huge number of pages. But I've said what I think I need to say on that topic up to this point. It's still a very introductory presentation. It's there's way more to go, but I don't have much more to say. I've done enough interviews, I've done enough videos, I've done enough talking of it to just any more talking will just be saying the same thing over and over and over again. And I don't really need to do that. We have enough out there. Yeah, okay, I'll lose some book sales by not doing some more interviews, but it just means I'm doing more and more and more interviews over and over and over again, which I don't think needs to happen. So I think that topic is completed for now. I'm still working on the next book, but for now I'm going to just take my time and I'm writing it personally. I'm writing it as if it's first and foremost a book for myself, and it's an amazing thing to write a book just for yourself, as if the only recipient will be you. It's a very interesting way of writing. That doesn't mean I don't think at some point I'll share parts of it or pieces of it, but I don't know what I'll share, how much, to who, when. But I'm still working on it. And it's an interesting project to write, to research and write, especially something so huge as exiting the matrix, which is, I'm sort of trying, and I'm writing a lot about the Grail in this. I'm writing a lot about the techniques, you might say. But I am writing a different book. So I wanted to take a different direction in my writing for all of you. And I'm going back to a historical book. I'm going back to something historical from the 1800s. A book that, on the surface, some people might say that's a really strange topic. Why would he go from writing about the expositions to writing about this? But I think the subject matter is going to be quite interesting and quite surprising to people. And while I'm going to tone it down a little bit of the direct references to reset-like history of the 1800s, it's going to be there beneath the surface. It's going to, for those who understand that message, they will find it in the book. The others will have to figure it out who don't come from that, who are going to take the history at a little more face value. But even then, it's still going to be, I think it's going to not upset. Well, maybe it will. It will certainly be a bit controversial to a number of historians who do eventually read this book. So I'm working on that. I thought I was going to do a book on one thing. I did that for a month, first part of the month, and it just wasn't going anywhere. And then I finally realized what I did want to write about in the last few weeks has gone much, much better, much, much smoother. The research is easier. The package is being put together. And so my hope is maybe sometime end of the summer. That book's going to be ready, but it also means I'm not going to post be too much at all, because the book writing takes a lot of my time, and spring is starting to appear. It's time to get the garden ready. It's time to get the crops put in the ground, and so there's a lot of farm work now to do. But there's a lot of videos here. I mean, I've put out 300 videos, and I'm pleased with what's there. Of course, there's looking back, you can always, certainly a year or two in from one video to the next, you can look back and say, oh, we should have said that differently, or oh, I don't really agree with that anymore. But that's part of growth, right? And that's just part of moving along, that you shouldn't always keep thinking all the same things 5, 10, 15 years in the future. Things should change. What 5 years in the future is going to look like, given what the chat AI is showing us, and given what the people who've had a lot of knowledge of what AI is going to eventually become in this reality, which again will be like Archons. It's a ride you better be ready to buckle in and take, for sure. And it's also, one of the things is, I talked years ago about, time is speeding up and things are going faster. It might be, but the speed that the artificial intelligence is being thrown out there is, I think it's staggering, even for the people who are working in it. I think even the people who are working in it are stunned by the speed of what's coming out. And of course, they don't know. Most of them don't really know what's behind the scenes. Only like the project leader probably knows what the Pentagon has, or what this group has, or what's really going on at this organization. But it's coming out so quickly. And again, there's a reason for it. I think as we're seeing our simulation, our reality being, I don't want to say squeezed, that's not the right word, but as it's being, when I don't want to say it's ending necessarily either, that I'm using the term squeezed by meaning that, like, you've got what you think is a certain size or space or time frame of the simulation, and then it's like a ball, and it's being squeezed like a rubber ball, and you squeeze it down on itself, so it gets smaller, tighter. So everything gets tighter and smaller, whether it be space, whether it be time, whether it be everything. And that's kind of what I feel is we're starting to see happen. So everything involving these dimensional layers are moving to us at a very quick, very rapid rate. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say for you today. I've got one more chapter of Exit the Cave to post for you guys, which I will do. Just a reminder again, as a non-monetized channel, I don't put any advertisements on it myself. YouTube likes to put a lot of its own advertisements on for its own purposes, but none of them are coming from me, and I earn nothing from that. Everything I earn is quite simply from book sales and donations, and that's what I get for my work with this topic. So I will go back to working on the history book, working on my private book, and still then once a month I'll check in and say hi, see where our world is at, and see if something new and interesting has come up. I've had a lot of various books and television shows and movies sent to me, but nothing has bubbled to the surface for me to say to anybody, yeah, here's something I've never seen before that's new. Here's something that's really great. Now, when stuff starts getting pumped out now by AI in the next few months, who knows what we're going to see? So it's always to be prepared for the speed that things are going to change at, in the, certainly potentially in the financial sector. The change is going to happen to the work environment, to the job environment, to everything. It's all being, and I wouldn't be surprised if the financial sector's bit of an explosion that's happening is related to what's coming out with the AI. As AI is also resetting everything, everything within the structure of how things are done, not just with knowledge and information, but what people will do with it. Now is the time when the financial world is being restructured at the same time. So, yeah. So it's Thursday. I'm staying as far away from the Donald Trump story as possible. But at the same time, I just look at the headlines just to see, is there another Jesus story headline that pops up that fits so I'll just be checking that over the next few days out of my own curiosity. Going to watch the golf this weekend and see if something good comes about there. Take a little bit of an early spring break. And, yeah, thanks for being around for the journey. Like I say, I really feel that I put a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of soul, interestingly, into Exit the Cave. I'm happy with it. I'm really happy with the text. I'm really happy with what it shares, but I've said enough on that topic now, and reality has indicated very strongly that I didn't really understand. Like Gurdjieff spoke about these topics, right? About being a sly man, and certain ancient Egyptian connotations and certain ideas of the parables, and I didn't fully understand what they meant. I didn't fully understand their message. I didn't fully understand their meaning. And that's one thing that's really been useful in the last 6 months is those metaphors are being understood now. And like everything, once or somebody sent me an email or put a comment, I can't remember, but said they don't use that word understanding, they use innerstanding now. That it's all about, and it's great because that the other word with a U has very unique legal meanings, right? So it's good. So I'm using it as much as I can. I forget once in a while still, but innerstanding. So, which is, standing under your own inner knowledge, which is great. I love the word. I'm sorry I can't remember who put that out, but innerstanding, and it's it even every time I've been using it. Even when I write, I still might use the understanding word in the writing, of course, but when I type it, I still think innerstanding in my mind. And it's a very powerful word, actually, to understand something. Try that yourself. Catch yourself a few times when you're using it over the next few days, and notice that every time and particularly every time you say it to somebody, which of course they'll look weird at you, but there's like a power boost you get. There's some kind of little jolt you get. Again, even though I'm not going to say too much about this topic going forward, lots of great stuff is still out there. Mark over at Forever Conscious Research, he's still putting out really great presentations on the topic. There's been some good videos from Jeff Mara still. He's just, of course, interviewing the near-death experience, but there's been a couple of really interesting ones that I have to listen to recently that have been quite unique. Of course, Wayne Bush's site, trickedbythelight.com, still a great repository of knowledge and information and things he's put together. Lots of others are talking about this, right? Tina and Karen are talking about it. Tony's talking about it. There's a number of them out there who are sharing the subject matter. Just they came to mind because we talked recently, right? So keep checking out what's going to be out there. But I also see that there comes a point where the real next phase of the work gets done person to person. It gets done in small groups or friends on the path, getting together and figuring the next step out themselves, doing the next work where it stops becoming just a giant outward presentation, and it becomes an inner presentation and an inner sharing with those you have a connection to, that you feel are really. Lots of people say, oh yeah, I want to exit the cave, I want to leave the matrix, and you watch how they live their life, and has nothing to do with anything like that. It's all about themselves and their own fears and hopes and dreams and wishes, or whatever, trying to be important, as opposed to really taking the time to dig into that question. What is the cave? What is the matrix? What is the exit point? And then more importantly, what do you do? Right? That's the question. It all comes down to that. Some innerstanding and some knowledge and some information is useful, but it's not useful at all if you're not doing something with it. You actually have to put it into practice. You actually have to. Great line from Shanti Deva in Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life is, a sick person will never get better merely by reading medical texts. You have to actually put what you read into practice and do it. And that's a huge part of this work. And I think that's where the Castaneda books, that's one of the reasons I really like them, because how much of the story is true, how much is not, how much is valuable, how much is not valuable. The main point of those books is it's a story of Castaneda doing something. Whether they were valuable, not valuable, good or not, the point is he wasn't sitting at home, sitting on his couch watching TV. He was doing something. He was out in nature, in various realms, in going within. He was doing work. That's what the books are presenting, and that's, if you really want to go, if you really want to return home, it's about what are you doing, not what are you thinking. A whole bunch of knowledge is not going to get you past the challenges. The various books of the dead and ancient texts are giving you information from the standpoint of clues and information, but with the idea that you are already putting it into practice. So when the time comes, when you're actually in the moment, you know what to do. The Apocalypse of James in Gnostic texts isn't meant to be just read and memorized and talked about over dinner. It's meant to be internalized and owned, so that should that circumstance arise in the after-death state, you don't have to question. You know what to do. You're able to act as you need to act. So I'll leave it there. Thanks again. We will see everybody later on in the month, and let's see what new crazy things our little simulated reality has to show us. Cheers, guys.